Yeah, it's thank you very much for having me on air. It's actually, I mean, it's a very interesting question. So the type of weaponry, it's really important. States are claiming that are sending defensive weaponry, or I read also other expressions, more interesting expressions, including lethal aid. Basically, doing an overview, looking at what they are claiming to send, they are mainly sending anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft missiles like Javelin missiles and Stinger missiles. Some states have also claimed that are providing landmines. So I think it's all about. I mean, the tactics that they're trying to support is basically trying to stop the advancement of tanks and the bombardment from the sky with aircraft. I feel that the states providing weaponry are highlighting these characteristics of the defensive nature. Even though, I mean, it's not really a thing in international law. The weapons are weapons; they're not defensive or offensive weaponry. But I think that the states are hinting at the fact that they are intervening in self-defense. I mean, they are supporting Ukraine effort to defend, to repeal the aggressive attack by Russia. So I think that's the connection.
And so, Riccardo, how then does it square with international law? I mean, does this become an exception? Would Russia have grounds to say this was illegal after the event?
So it's really interesting, because this has been an issue discussed at international level for some time, and probably after Ukraine. We are going to have to talk a lot about this. So traditionally, it's really up to the state supporting a belligerent state on how they define their position, their attitude towards the conflict. If they claim to be neutral, they would have a comprehensive ban on supporting any party of the conflict. So if a state proclaims itself as neutral, I mean, transfer of arms would be unlawful under international laws, according to the law of neutrality. However, after 1945, we have the UN Charter claiming that the states can exceptionally use a force in self-defense to repel an attack threatening the territorial integrity or political independence of a state, which is what is actually happening. This is really a one-on-one case of a war of aggression from Russia against Ukraine. In that case, the support of the state that is defending itself, it's not anymore unlawful according to the regimes I was mentioning earlier. So it's actually the support. Because Ukraine is acting lawfully, the support of Ukraine, at least under the law on the use of force, it's lawful. Actually, some scholars, and I tend to agree on this, they also claim that there is an obligation to support a state acting in self-defense according to the law of international responsibility. The problem that right now is that normally we would have the Security Council defining a conflict as a war of aggression, like it happened, for example, with the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq. But in this moment, we have the Security Council frozen because of Russia being involved and exercising veto. So it's really up to how states define the conflict in itself.
Yeah, which is why it makes the EU's sort of absolute commitment to this very unprecedented but fascinating. It also brings us to this flood of foreign fighters who are keen to help Ukraine. We see them coming back from Poland. We see people wanting to leave Australia and go and fight. In some small cases, Russia to fight for Russia as well. What is the status of people wanting to go to Ukraine and fight? Is it legitimate?
So we are actually, I mean, really, these episodes related to the war in Ukraine are actually touching upon some uncovered nerves of international law themselves. So we are in a gray area right now. Again, if a state proclaims itself as neutral towards the conflict, it would have an obligation to prevent the departure of private individuals, even though it wouldn't be responsible for the individuals themselves crossing the border and joining the conflict. Again, we are not in front of states proclaiming themselves as neutral, so we have to look at if we have a specific conventions and actually applicable to this case. And actually, the issue is that these people might be seen as mercenaries, even including by Russia, which is quite it's quite funny given the use of mercenary or the alleged use of mercenary by Russia itself. But the problem of defining a private individual as a mercenary is mainly the fact that a mercenary does not enjoy the status of prisoner of war. And so there might be serious consequences for private individuals found on the battleground by Russians. Definitely, what is very important to clarify is that even as civilians embracing weapons and taking direct part to hostilities in an international armed conflict can be considered as taking part. Can be considered taking part in the hostilities, and so which would open the possibility for the Russians, for example, to target those individuals. So it's really up to how Russia will interpret the relevant international humanitarian law. Definitely, Ukraine, for example, in the case of mercenaries, has specific obligations to prevent the enlisting of mercenaries. So and they have actually direct obligations based on conventions or international conventions. So,
although all conventions seem to be out the window at the moment, don't they, Riccardo? It's uncharted territory. So helpful that you talked us through all of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.